Hello everyone, my name is Elite Trainer Kenway, and one of the main focuses on this channel is exploring all of the mysteries of the Pokemon world. That is the reason why I craft so many Pokemon theories. I want to answer the kinds of questions that no one else would even think of asking. Eventually, I want to get to a point where we have left no mystery unsolved. And in order to do that properly, we have to make sure we aren't taking anything for granted. We sometimes have to question things that we have always blindly accepted as fact. And that brings me to the subject I want to talk about today. The ancestor to all Pokemon. It's Mew, right? We've known this for 25 years. It's been Mew ever since day one. Are you sure? What actual evidence do we have to support the idea that Mew is the ancestor to all Pokemon? Because Professor Oak said so? It's not like Professor Oak's ever been wrong before. But in all seriousness, what evidence do we actually have to support the idea that Mew is the ancestor to all Pokemon? In the Silver Pokedex, Professor Oak states that Mew is said to have the DNA for all of Pokemon, and this allows Mew to learn any move. However, we know this is not true. We know that there are several moves that are either signature moves or learned by level up by other Pokemon that Mew cannot learn. As a matter of fact, when Professor Oak states that Mew can learn any move, he's specifically talking about man-made teachable moves. As a matter of fact, the indication that Mew is the ancestor to all Pokemon doesn't come until the 6th game in the series, Pokemon Crystal, where again, it doesn't outright say Mew is the ancestor to all Pokemon. What it says is that some people began research to see if Mew is the ancestor to all Pokemon. And by the time the Let's Go games come around, Professor Oak has dropped any mention of Mew's DNA whatsoever, only stating that Mew has fine hairs that can be seen under a microscope. So it would seem as though Oak has completely dropped the idea that Mew is the ancestor to all Pokemon, after never explicitly confirming it to begin with. It's almost as if Professor Oak would have learned something between 1996 and 2019 that made him question that belief. But what could Professor Oak have learned that made him question whether or not Mew is the ancestor to all Pokemon? Maybe it has something to do with his cousin in Alola. We'll get to that in just a minute. Now, I do have to take a step back and mention that this part of the theory was not my original idea. I actually heard this idea from a friend of mine named Mallory, who is a real-life archaeologist who studies Pokemon archaeology. Mallory has an amazing TikTok channel that I will link in the description below. Mallory's take on whether or not Mew is the ancestor to all Pokemon came from a video posted a few days ago on Geek Ecology, also on TikTok, also in the description below. Now, as I stated a moment ago, practically everything that was said up until this point was thought of by either Mallory or Geek Ecology. This is where I decided to take the question of, if Mew is not the ancestor to Pokemon, then who is? And I decided to answer that question for myself. Now, in my pursuit to either prove or disprove that Mew is the ancestor to all Pokemon, I came across a video a few years old made by Loxton and Noggin, where he states that Arceus created multiple Mew, and that those Mew bred the traditional way, which led to Pokemon evolution. Unfortunately, there are a number of holes in Loxton's theory, some of which he points out himself in his video. If Mew is as old or nearly as old as Dialga, Palkia, and Giratina, then why does Mew not have an origin form? Now, I know what you're thinking. The Lake Trio is as old or almost as old as the Creation Trio, and they don't have origin forms. However, I would submit this to you. The Creation Trio was designed to create time, create space, create the distortion world, while the Lake Trio has the responsibility to grant knowledge, emotion, and willpower to people. We can assume that just like here on Earth, humans in the Pokemon world didn't just pop up out of nowhere, they had to evolve from something. Meaning that the Lake Trio may not have been created until many, many millions of years later, after the Pokemon world itself was created. Also, the Lake Trio does not create these things, the Lake Trio simply grants these things. We see, thanks to Dialga, Palkia, and Giratina, that these Pokemon need a more powerful form in order to carry out the process of creating time, space, or the distortion world. Mew, similarly, if given the task of creating Pokemon life, would also take on a more powerful form in order to do so. The next thing that I would ask you to question about Mew being the ancestor to all Pokemon is how Mew evolving into other Pokemon would work. Thanks to things like Hisuian variants, regional variants, and fossil Pokemon, we know that Pokemon macro-evolve over time. If all Pokemon evolved from Mew, then Mew itself as a species should be extinct. The last question that I would ask you to ponder is this. If Mew is in fact the ancestor to all Pokemon and was created by Arceus shortly after the creation trio, then why is Mew not mentioned anywhere in the lore of Sinnoh or ancient Hisui? Mew, if it were in fact the primary source for creation of all Pokemon here on the Pokemon world, should have been mentioned somewhere in the Sinnoh or Hisuian lore, alongside the creation trio. And the reason for that is simple. The world we inhabit in the Pokemon games was never meant to have Pokemon. I know, I just keep coming up with one insane theory after the next, and I'm sorry, I can't fix my brain. That's just how it works. But I've convinced myself, and I hope to convince you also, that the world we inhabit inside the Pokemon games was never actually meant to house Pokemon. We see many instances of regular animals in the Pokemon world with absolutely no explanation. The only explanation I can think of is that Arceus created two universes, one with Pokemon and one with regular animals. But of course, that raises a lot of questions. First question, if Mew is not responsible for creating all Pokemon, then who is? Ladies and gentlemen, if you would be so kind as to allow me, I would like to introduce you to the true ancestor to all Pokemon, Cosmog. Now, if you don't know much at all about Cosmog and instead rush to evolve him to Solgaleo or Lunala as soon as you could, allow me to explain a few details about Cosmog. Cosmog's design seems to be heavily influenced by a molecular cloud, which is a specific type of nebula in which star formations occur. And if we look at Cosmog's antennae, we can already see Cosmog creating stars. Cosmog has the power to create stars. Cosmog has the power to create solar systems. Cosmog seems to have the material capable of creating stars and possibly even planets. And when planets and solar systems are formed, the right combination of atoms can create microorganisms and therefore life on those planets. But that then begs the question, if Cosmog takes Mew's place as the ancestor to all Pokemon, then why does Cosmog not show up in Sinnoh lore? Because again, the world we inhabit in the Pokemon games was never meant to house Pokemon. The world that we explore in the Pokemon games that Arceus created was created for humans and animals, not for Pokemon. Therefore, Cosmog was not part of our original creation story. As a matter of fact, nowhere in the creation lore does it specifically say that Arceus created Pokemon. Now, we know that thanks to Pokemon Legends Arceus, the Arceus that we meet across the entire Pokemon franchise is not the original form of Arceus. Just as our Arceus created our universe, so then another Arceus created another universe. As a matter of fact, there are several instances in the Pokemon games in which the Pokemon multiverse or multi-universes have been confirmed. So we know that for every universe created, there is a piece of Arceus and therefore a new creation trio. As our Arceus began to create our universe and our galaxies and our solar systems, our Arceus created Cosmogs all across the universe. These Cosmogs had the sole purpose of creating solar systems. The Cosmog that created our solar system also created the materials that later formed our world. And of course, as our world formed, bacteria and microorganisms came together to survive, to thrive, and eventually to evolve, just like they did in our real world. Just like our Cosmog created our solar system and created life on our planet, so then another Cosmog in another universe, also created by another Arceus, also created another solar system, in which another planet similar enough to our own contained the building blocks given to it by Cosmog to build and sustain life. Our alternate universe Cosmog then goes down to one of the worlds it created to see the beauty of its creation. Over the course of millions, if not billions of years, these microorganisms evolved and became Pokemon. Eventually, these Pokemon became hostile and tried to attack Cosmog. Fearing for its own life, Cosmog teleported from place to place, never having enough strength to teleport off planet, until eventually it no longer had enough PP to teleport. Cosmog then began to use Struggle to fight back, resting whenever it could, and eventually it evolved into Cosmome. Cosmome, realizing that with its new form also comes the inability to move, decided to sit motionless and absorb all the energy that it could, hoping that it would change forms again. realizing that it now had the power to create and control ultra wormholes and travel the multiverse. Solgaleo or Lunala decided to travel to a new universe where it could potentially start over and create new life. Solgaleo or Lunala then traveled through the ultra wormhole and came to our world, where we do in fact have Pokemon like animals, but the animals on this planet did not have mystical powers like the Pokemon created in the other dimension. Solgaleo or Lunala, realizing that it no longer had the ability to create the basic building blocks of life, sought out to find another Lunala or Solgaleo and brought them back to our world to create another Cosmog. This Cosmog, rather than being tasked with creating stars and planets, was simply tasked with creating the building blocks that would become the microbacteria that would eventually evolve into Pokemon. As the Pokemon on our world grew and developed and evolved, they very quickly forced all non-magical animals into extinction. All with the exception, of course, of the humans, who eventually learned to control and befriend these Pokemon. This is why we see our universe's Arceus completely apathetic to the fact that some Pokemon species are dying out, because our Arceus never created Pokemon to exist on our world. We know that our universe's Arceus created Pokemon in space, like Staryu, Starmie, Clefairy, Clefable, and Minior, but our Arceus never intended Pokemon to live on this planet. This also explains perfectly why the Ultra Beasts that we see in the Alolan games are so evolutionarily more advanced than the Pokemon on our own world. This is why the Ultra Beasts are more powerful than most, if not all, of the Pokemon on our world, and why most of them have been able to evolve past having things like eyes, ears, and mouths. Because those Ultra Beasts from that other universe have had millions, if not billions, of years of evolution that puts them far ahead of our own Pokemon. Something that we very well may see right in front of us when Pokemon Scarlet and Violet come out with Koraidon and Miraidon. This also perfectly explains why Pokemon evolution may have taken a path more similar to that of macroevolution in the real world. Mammals, reptiles, fish, mollusks, they didn't all come from Mew. They couldn't have all come from Mew. They all came from the same building blocks of life that our animals on our world came from. Who knows? If Arceus can create a world with Pokemon, and Arceus can create a world without Pokemon, then who's to say Arceus didn't also create our world? Unfortunately, unless we see an ultra wormhole in the sky one day, we'll just never know.